audition these and hear how they sound. That's pretty cool. I can audition another one. It's maybe a little bit too warm, too low. I really like the way this big trance pad sounds. And that's kind of it's a Phil Wickham song. He loves these sorts of shimmery, like, pad sounds too. So I know this is going to do the song justice. So I'm going to hit add sound. So now in just a couple minutes we've got the piano sound ready to go. We have this trance pad ready to go, but I want to fill out some more space. Again, my iPhone told me that there's an organ in the original recording as well. So I'm going to add an organ to this blue module. I'm going to hit add sound, Sunday keys, organ, and then I know that from my ear training that it's a B3 style organ on the recording. So I'm going to tap into B3 organ, and I've got a couple different flavors. This one's like pretty ambient. It's almost a pad, not quite a pad. Yeah, this one's a little bit more of a traditional like Hammond organ sound. So I'm going to keep that here, and of course I can adjust the volume of the different layers so that the piano's kind of sitting on top of everything and those other layers are just blending in. So these three layers together sound pretty cool, and I can bring that organ up if I wanted to. Okay, so we have two more sound modules where we can flesh this out a little bit more, and I love to try and bring a lot of potential sound to the rehearsal, because I'm never quite sure what everybody else is going to bring. I'm sitting in with incredible musicians, and I've never played any music with any of them. So what I'm going to do is prepare to fill space, but then I have the flexibility to leave space for everybody else once we get in there and sound check at 2 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and fill these sound modules, and then who knows if you're actually going to hear them when we get over there. But I'm going to go ahead and prepare like they're going to be useful, and I have the flexibility to quickly make changes so that I'm not taking up too much space, but I am bringing the full sound to the band. So let's go ahead and do this. This is an edgy call. I'm going to add a bass sound, a synth bass sound. And this sub bass sound, this is probably my favorite bass sound at Sunday Keys. So I'm going to pull that in. You can hear it a little bit. There's no sub in here, but it's down there. And it's not, there's no high end, there's no brightness. It's just adding some extra low end thickness. I think it will layer in nicely with what Jason's going to do from the bass guitar without getting in the way or stepping on toes at all. Okay, so all together these 4 sounds. So, do I know the chords? Joy in the house of the Lord. Yeah, okay. So I've got the piano sitting up on top of everything. I can play chords. So that's feeling good. I'm kind of blending these other layers just underneath the piano so that I'm still able to do piano playing type stuff and nothing is taking up too much space. Okay, so now I've got the core ideas and this sort of powerful piano sound that I can bring to the song. I'm going to program this 5th pink sound module to be like a little bit of color, a little bit of extra texture. And again, I don't know if this is actually going to have a place in the final mix. I'm going to figure that out when I get together with everybody this afternoon. But let's go ahead and give it a go. Before we do, I'm going to add an arpeggiated sound. If you're not familiar with what an arpeggiator does, it takes the notes you play and it plays them back rhythmically based on the tempo that you ask it to do so. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I've got the tempo of this patch set to the tempo of the song. So as long as I play in time with the drummer, with the click track, it's going to lock in perfectly. So this is easy. I'm just going to select the 3 dots next to House of the Lord in my set list. And I'm going to choose Patch Settings from this menu. Now I'm going to flip this little toggle next to Change Tempo. And this makes it easy. I don't have to tap in the perfect tempo in time with the drummer. I can just say, I know what song this patch is for, so why would I make it complicated? Anytime I select this patch, take the tempo to the tempo of the song, which Planning Center helpfully told me an hour ago is 86 BPM. So now I've got the tempo, which you can see up in the top, right in the middle, tempo, 86 BPM, and a little indication per patch to remind me that anytime I select that patch, I'm going to go to that tempo. And you know, if the click track dies and the band gets off and I need to, I can actually just touch that and tap in a different tempo on the fly. So I still have flexibility and control to go wherever we need to go musically, but I can prep and save myself having to recall doing 5 different things at once. One of the biggest things that we try to simplify with the Sunday Keys app is the times when you're not playing a song. Here's what I mean, those moments of transition, the beginning of a service, in between the first and second songs, when you come up on stage at the end as the band comes back on stage and everybody's sort of expecting you to do who knows what. It's those moments that don't fit into a rehearsal, but we are expected to adequately cover, that often don't get prepared for. And so our thinking was, well, what if you didn't have to prepare for it? What if it was just easy enough to build this execution, this flexibility into the core way that the Sunday Keys app works, so that you don't have to be clever, you don't even have to remember that those moments are coming. The app is just always ready to handle them when they inevitably come. So, we're at 86 BPM, and now I can add this color layer, this little bit of extra flavor to this patch, and then we are going to be, hopefully, pretty well set for this afternoon as soon as I learn all the chords. I'm hitting this pink plus icon to add a sound to the fifth sound module. And again, I'm going into the Sunday Keys sound library. I'm going to choose ARPs and sequences. ARPs will play back whatever you feed into it. Sequences will play back specific notes that you program to be played back. So you guys know Heroes in Heaven, the Elevation song, where the entire song is the synth that just goes, that's a sequence. It just goes and goes and goes and goes. You can let the track handle that, but you could also just program it and have it play back anytime you play the keyboard. Getting off topic, we're doing an ARP, David. Okay, so view ARPs, and I'm gonna preview a couple of these here and see how this sounds. I'm gonna bring these other sounds down so you guys can really hear what these ARPs are doing. So here I don't have a specific agenda. I'm just trying to find something that I think is cool and is likely to fit in the mix. So I don't quite know where we're going, but there's always this kind of thing all over Phil Wickham's song. These little sparkly bits in the background that don't poke out of the top, but they just fill this sonic space and add some melodic movement. So this one's pretty cool. Thank you guys for letting me prepare during this talk. It's really helpful because I don't have any other time to do it. This one's cool too, a little bit darker. I think I really like the way that this one is it's not super low and heavy, it's just adding a little bit of sparkle, kind of just dancing off of itself. I think I like that. So now I'm going to bring in my other layers and see how it blends in. So you hear it when there's this hang, but the rest of the time you're just hearing the piano on the pad, the overall idea of the keys parts, and then all of that nuance together just sort of ends up sounding like one big thing. But it could be a small thing too. If we needed to, we could blend these layers back down and just kind of play the piano part, because we have the flexibility to adapt when we get to that rehearsal context. Now for me, I'm really obviously comfortable working inside of this app environment because we've been working on it for 2 years. But for volunteers, we think that having everything labeled on screen, everything color-coded and simple to understand makes it possible for volunteers to handle these sorts of on-the-fly, mid-rehearsal adjustments as well. So even if you're not a sound designer, even if you're not a techie person, if you're comfortable following verbal prompts, or if you as the worship leader, worship pastor are willing to learn a few specific bits of terminology, then you can ask for what your keys players are seeing on screen. And that helpful shared terminology goes such a long way towards breaking down the barriers. When I was first trying to empower keys players on my team, I would just say, could you just make it all sound a little warmer? And they would just stare at me like, what does that mean? You're saying warmer, like that's a temperature. What does warm sound like? Well, I mean, we could talk about that, but I had to do some research and put in some effort to actually be able to say, well, this kind of sound, where it's sort of the low frequencies, it sits underneath the other instruments, that feels warm in the room. It's inviting. It's not cold and bright and brittle or low and dark and boomy. It's just sort of warm. It comes in underneath everything or covers over everything a little bit like a blanket. That's what warm means. But if you don't take the time to develop that terminology, or the tools you use don't reflect that terminology, then you're constantly going to be having to re-explain what you mean and not have those frames of reference. So Sunday Keys is designed to automatically help establish and reinforce the way you talk about, approach, and prepare the worship keys position. Okay, so we have 5 sounds for House of the Lord, and I think it feels pretty good. Yeah, okay, pretty happy with this. The last thing that I'm going to do is, I'm not going to play this exact way for the entire song. Right? I like this combination of possible sounds, but any good band plays with dynamics, ebbs and flows, lows and highs. We're going to move through the arrangement, and we want to do that in a musical way. Now, traditionally, if you had a hardware keyboard or if you were using software like Ableton Live or MainStage, you'd have to think ahead, plan out where those moments of transition are going to be, and then actually physically execute those changes at the right moment while still playing all of the piano parts seamlessly. That's the ideal. It is often very difficult. Even if you're the one who built all of the patches and sounds and you have that knowledge, it's still a lot to think about. And you're really not thinking about music in those moments. You're thinking about nailing these technical moments of transition. You're thinking about not messing up, not being distracting. And we really think you should be able to focus on playing the instrument when you're on stage with your band in a service. So we designed this feature called Patch Snapshots. It's these 5 rectangles right above the keyboard. So default, snapshot 2, snapshot 3, snapshot 4, snapshot 5. And we like to pitch it as you use patches to move from one song to the next. So I've got this set of sounds for one song, and I've got this set of sounds for the next. But patch snapshots are to help you move through one specific song. So from the all-in intro to the subdued verse and the build into the final bridge, instead of having to manually move 5 faders and turn on the delay effect and turn on the octave effect and make sure that I move my mod wheel up so the pad is nice and bright, I just did 10 things, and I can't play the piano at the same time while I'm doing that, and especially not if I'm playing this big riff as the band builds into the bridge. So instead of having to do all of that manually, you can program all of those changes to snapshots. And then when you tap a snapshot, everything that you want to have happen just magically happens while you continue to play your instrument instead of trying to execute 5 or 10 different complex things at once. Let me show you what I mean, because once keys players and Worshipkeys gets this and see it happen, it can feel a little bit like magic. It's one of my favorite things inside of the Sunday Keys app. So we have 5 snapshots. That means we can hit 5 unique marks in the song. Now, I'm still learning the song, but I know it starts all in. So I'm going to make that my first snapshot. We can rename this to help me know where I'm at. I'm going to need it because it's not fresh in my mind yet. So I'm going to name this all in. So I just long press on the snapshot, and then I can hit rename. Okay, so now I just want to start the song here, and anytime I'm all into the song, I'm going to choose this snapshot and be in this space. So I'm just going to choose where I want every sound's volume to be. I'm doing this by ear, so. And I also want it to be nice and bright. So I'm going to move the bottom left corner of the screen. That's called the mod wheel. You can see that blue bar moving up. What that does is it makes all the pads brighter and more intense in the high range. So here's with the mod wheel up. You can hear that high end, sort of sparkly, airy bit. If I move the mod wheel down, you can hear the energy drop out of that high frequency range. It gets darker, more subdued. This is a really powerful way to not change anything you're doing other than how people are perceiving and feeling the way that those sounds fill or don't fill space. All of that to say, I want it bright at the beginning because we're doing this big moment. Okay, and I also really want this cool rhythmic component from the piano. So I'm going to turn on this octave effect and this delay effect for the piano specifically. Here's how that sounds. Here's just the piano. And you can hear this rhythmic component, which is really, really cool. So we're going to start the song here. Once I've dialed in the snapshot to be how I like, I just hit the save icon just to the right of the snapshots area. And now that snapshot is saved. So anytime I touch that snapshot, those settings are going to be applied. I'm going to be ready to go. So next up, I know I'm going to drop down at some point in the song. I don't know the map well enough to know, but I'm sure we're going to have to drop down dynamically. So I'm going to build out another snapshot that takes that big intensity and folds it down. So I'm going to move the mod wheel down to the darkest position. and I'm going to decrease the volume of the secondary sounds in the patch. I'm going to keep that piano big because I want to bring some consistency. I want to play my part in the band, but I don't want to step on anybody's toes, and I want to leave the band somewhere to go dynamically. So I'm going to turn off these effects, this octave up and delay, those orange buttons for the piano, and I'm going to bring the volume of all the other sounds down a substantial amount. So now I've got Snapshot 2 dialed in. This is definitely like verse, down, Ridgeland all day, whatever gets thrown at me. So when I'm happy with it, I just hit that save icon again. And now this is Snapshot 2. So I can long press on that and hit rename. And I'll just name it. Since I'm not sure when I'm going to use it, I'm just going to name it down. But you can name it verse or whatever's going to help you and your team be able to hit these marks. Okay, so now I have 2 snapshots, 2 moments in the song that I'm ready for. But like I said, the moments, how you get from one moment to the next, these transitions are super, super important. So check this out. I'm playing down, and then I hit all in. And the snapshots, let me do it again so you can see. Here we are all in. And then it all fades down over time, smoothly, into this other space. It's a feature we call snapshot transitions. So you can have 5 moments in the song, but you also get the moments in between those. So from one snapshot to the next, and you can take total control over how each transition happens. So let's say I want this transition from all in to down to be really slow and subtle. I want it to take this nice, just gentle ramp down. So I can long press on the down snapshot and choose Customize. This is the Snapshot Transitions menu, and it lets me choose how long this transition actually takes. So you can see Snapshot Transition length is set to 2 seconds right now, which is sort of a relatively like moderate ramp down. If we wanted to, we could make this 10 seconds long. So we're all in, and then the verse starts. I'm just holding the chord. The energy just so smoothly drops out of the high end of what I'm doing. It's still going, and it's stuff that you literally have to take both hands off of the keyboard and go like this in perfect sync, like Wolverine, to nail it. And you're not playing the instrument anymore. You're working with technology in a way that doesn't necessarily feel musical. It feels high stakes. It feels scary. It's like if I do this wrong, this moment is ruined. But because you can dial it in during preparation and then just execute during performance, you're playing piano, you're playing keys, and the technology is just a platform for you to be able to do that. You can also sync snapshot transitions to your clock. So if you know what tempo you're at, and you know I want a 4-bar transition, you could change the transition type from time to beats. And you could say, you know what, I want a 4-bar fade down at the BPM of my patch. So I'm actually doing this afternoon. We're playing Great Things. I'm not sure where in the set list. It's moved around a lot today, but at some point I know we're going to play Great Things. And Great Things has this really cool synth intro. It starts really quiet. You can barely hear it. And it's because in the production, somebody drew in this automation for 4 bars, so the synth just like dramatically enters. And I know that the track could handle that, but my favorite thing is when the tracks don't have to handle it. So what I programmed is this all-in snapshot. In Snapshot 2, takes me from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All the way up to here. And then back down for my verse. I hit Snapshot 3. So I'm able to do these things that were previously just not possible in any software. And I can nail these sort of like hero moments that the track could do, but if your keys player can play these things live, and all they have to do is hit a button and then play the riff, they are gonna feel so empowered and so excited about that moment instead of terrified by it or disappointed because they can hear the track doing something really cool and they're just holding a pad down. Okay, so we made this patch for House of the Lord, and you guys will get to hear it in a few hours and let me know how it lands. Maybe I'll tweak it a little bit more if I have time during lunch, but I think this is probably about it. But I'm able to use these two little moments, all in and down, to sort of cover the bases. And then when we get to rehearsal, if the MD asks for something really specific, like, hey, could you give me a lead sound instead of an arp? I really want you to hit this riff live. I can just tap a sound, brighten down the pink section, and I can replace this sound with any other. So I can pull in a lead sound or whatever the MD needs, or if the sound person says, hey, this piano is a little bit too bright, could you turn that down for me? I can tap the orange settings icon at the top next to the grand piano. And I've got a compressor, I've got an equalizer, I've got total control over the sound quality and not just the volume. Because one of the things that really throws people off is when you start playing more than one instrument from the keyboard, you can't mix it like a piano anymore. And you have to establish that trust with your audio engineer to say, hey, my instrument isn't a piano. It could sound like an organ. It could sound like strings. It could sound like the brightest synth of all time. It could be this dark, subby bass. So could you please consider flattening the EQ and then giving me feedback during rehearsal where you need something different? And give me the first opportunity to fix it. And then if it's still broken, then you can also work with me to fix it. But you have to have a simple way for you or your volunteers to be able to actually make those changes effectively. So what you don't want to do is slow down rehearsal for 15 minutes trying to make the pad work in the mix. You need to be able to do that fast. If you're asking your keys players, or you yourself are trying to bring more, you have to be able to handle that in a way that doesn't bog everybody else down. So it doesn't become all about you and trying to do something that's going above and beyond so that you sound cool. Because that's not our heart, right? It's not to impress, but it is to support and enhance and bring something inspiring for our congregations. But with the way that this is laid out, you can, in a safe environment, make those sorts of fine-tuned adjustments in Congress with your audio engineers without it having to be a big technical conversation like, hey, please make the piano a little darker. Okay, I'm just going to open the EQ and I'm going to make the piano darker. You can teach your volunteers how to do this in just a minute. So I'm taking this knob here that says frequency, and I'm just darkening down the piano. Here's just the piano. Super bright, and I move this frequency knob down, and it gets darker. And all you have to do is teach your volunteers how to do that once, and then they're going to be able to take action on that feedback for the rest of the time inside of the app. Okay, so we built this song, showed you a little bit about set lists. We have about 15 minutes, and I'd love to just open this up to questions, because I use lots of terminology, and I want to have time for that. In the front.